Welcome back for another installment of Fellowship of the Rink. Episode 35 is brought to you by our incredible local friends in Waggle Golf, 9 Mile Brewing, and the officially unofficial craft beer of the Minnesota Wild, Barrel Theory Beer Company. With me, as always, Joe Smith of The Athletic, bringing you all the insider info on your Minnesota Wild and Gophers hockey. Joe, the season is here. We actually have hockey to talk about. This is crazy.
It's pretty incredible, and like my colleague Mike Russo wrote, the Wild have not trailed in any game so far. So this season is off to one hell of a start. I think you have a goalie goal already, and you have Kirill being Kirill. Like it's yeah. At least it's a very interesting part of the first part of the season, but it's more fun to talk about hockey and actual games and stuff than other things. So I'm looking forward to if tonight was any indication of what the season might look like, a win against the Blues, Gustavsson pulling a Bennington and scoring a goal, and then going through the fist pump line along the bench there. I give him a lot of credit for that one. That was Fleury-esque, and that's bucket list thing for Fleury is to score a goal, and so for Gus to do that is pretty incredible.
I was gonna say though, how pissed is Fleury?
Well, if Gus gets in a fight next, then absolutely Fleury will be pissed. Like that's
if he had fought Bennington in this game and scored that goal, Fleury might have just walked off the bench.
Has a goalie ever gotten a Gordie Howe hat trick?
Oh my God, that would have been.
That'd be a very low key Gus move to do that. Just be like, oh yeah, no, I got a goal, and then gave the puck to Kirill. Got this, that a Gordie Howe hat trick for a goalie. It's gonna be an all timer.
A goalie Howe hat trick, boom.
Goalie, yeah. But I guess TV during the timeout that St. Louis called like a minute to go, Fleury called a goalie meeting with Gustafsson and told him, hey, you need to shoot it if you have a 2-goal lead. Go for it, and Gus was like, oh yeah, good idea, sure. It just happened that it worked out perfectly where they flipped a shot to him, and that was no doubt on that one too. It was right in the net. It wasn't it wasn't a bar down situation, but for a goalie goal, that was pretty smooth. So it's moments like these that make a mundane game on a Tuesday night in St. Louis worth being at. Obviously, if you're a writer, right, that's such a cool moment to cover in the first goalie goal in Wild history to do it. But
that's not.
I don't know. I think aside from the goalie Howe hat trick, do you think that the Wild will be rethinking this 3 goalie plan now and just giving Gustavsson a run here? They have 3 off days before they play against Columbus on Saturday. Shouldn't Gustavsson be playing Saturday?
If he's not, that would be crazy to me. And it's so funny how quickly we go from a 3 goalie system to a 1 goalie system. But it feels like that's what's happening in front of us. Is that the bigger story, or some of the goals tonight non-goalie too? Like, first off, that Ryan Hartman goal, I've never seen a more nonchalant, just chill goal scored on a power play. Like, Kaprizov just flipped that right through. Hartman, no one was even aware that he was slipping through there, and just the most casual, just all right, I'll slip this in, whatever. That was fun, but the Lauko one's going to be the story of the night. Even with a goalie goal, that Lauko goal is what everyone's going to talk about. It
was a highlight reel goal, and I think that goal from watching on TV perspective was really cool, but I think the whole idea that Khusnutdinov and him as a whole on the PK, which has been such a big issue for them last number of years, since training camp, they've been really good. And if those two can become a really good dynamic duo and can create some havoc there and not score goals like they did tonight, but that's just more indicative of what that group has been doing. And part of the plan from John Hynes and the staff this year was finding the right combos, because they've had such a big turnover in their penalty kill since last couple of years. You lost the Duhaimes, the Dewars, Mason Shaw, and they're going to put Matt Boldy. They put Matt Boldy on the PK now, which I think is a great idea for a guy like him who's been able to play both ends of the ice, and that's where elite wingers do is form in all situations. So, You give it Ryan Hartman a chance in the PK sometimes as well. Like all of a sudden you kind of find the right personnel and, that chemistry where guys can be aggressive and you see what happened there. But yeah, I think way before, like the goalie goal is going to be the one on SportsCenter, right? Like the goalie goal is going to be the one that they talk about. But like, I think local fans probably will shoot out the Lauko goal as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess 2 notes off of that before we get into the actual rundown here. Of course, it is the most me luck in the world. Sunday, I bet Lauko to score 11-1 odds. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to ride this for a couple more games and see what happens. But of course, the NHL mattering as little as it does to sports betting, the odds don't get up until like sometime day of the game. And, of course, between Sunday and today, I completely forgot all about it. Didn't get my bet in. Didn't cash. Sad. But your point on Khusnutdinov too, I know they got scored on at the end of the day, but in overtime, that 4-on-3, he was a hawk on the puck. Like, I have not seen a wild forward kill a penalty the way he was killing that penalty in a long time. I'm really excited about him in general, but I agree. Him and Lauko could be a really fun tandem.
Yeah, and they're not asking him to be a Urov, right? They're not asking him to be a certain level player in terms of offensively. I think there's more offense to his game, but if you can be a third, fourth line center, you can win faceoffs, you can be important on the penalty kill, and pain in the ass to play against. Like, that's a very valuable role, and it takes away some pressure from other guys. So, you don't have to have some guys play as much penalty kill. The guys that we've seen before get injured more often than not. Like, give those young kids a chance, and if they can play, he's a really good hockey sense. He's got really good speed. He's tenacious on the forecheck, like you said. Like, if you can find that right chemistry there, then that all of a sudden solves some of your problems that they already have with their penalty kill, which they're hoping to fix this year.
And you can never have too many players like that. You will never have a surplus there. That's great. All right, so rundown for this episode. No interview this week. We're going to have a little bit of Gopher talk, round right back into just the start of the Minnesota Wild season. A meaty mailbag. Thank you all for throwing in questions. A lot of great questions, too. No one mailed it in. And then, of course, we've got to wrap up with our weekly segment, Keyboard Warriors, brought to you by Barrel Theory, bringing you some fun hot takes. We got a couple good ones here this week. But let's start with the Gophers. Joe, it's funny because you wouldn't think coming out of the Icebreaker tournament out in Vegas that anything short of winning the tournament would be acceptable. But anyone else out there that watched the games like I did, holy crap, is this team good? Wow. They absolutely, so I mean, they dismantled Air Force, but that was kind of check the box, business as usual. Connor Kurth, by the way, holy, what a line that is looking like it could shape out to be. Granted, we know the lines will probably get shuffled up quite a bit here early in the season, but him with Matthew Wood and Wild draft pick. That's right, Jimmy Clark. Those three looked fun. And you can tell Wood hasn't even really gotten fully comfortable, fully integrated into the way Gophers do things. Watch out when he is fully going. It's going to be a lot of fun. But the Omaha game, Joe, it was wild. I've never seen a team completely dominate a game like that and come out, with that overtime loss. They got goalied. It happens. I want it to happen this early. Give them something to come in and just hopefully bludgeon Duluth this coming weekend. Go and punish them up in their barn. But I don't have a negative thing to say. I think the one big thing, Wild fans probably don't want to hear this. They're already upset that Oliver Moore is going to be a member of the Chicago Blackhawks. Not nearly enough has been said about Sam Renzel, who I think is the breakout player of the year for the Gophers. I think he is going to do some crazy things this year, and it's going to be really fun to watch as a very deep blue line, as we've said pretty much every episode that we've talked about the Gophers. It's rinse and repeat, but on a team that has Chesley, has Kester, I think by the end of the season, Rinzel is the guy that paces this blue line, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, it's crazy to think to me that of all the guys that they've lost the last couple of years, that Moscow keeps pumping the tires of the blue line, right? Like, like you replace, the blue line that Faber and the Frozen Four we were at a couple of years ago with the Faber, the Combe, Johnson. Like,
I don't think that one will ever be matched. That one was just stupid.
So yeah, like it's hard to compare those. I mean, they all have different feels to it, different styles to it, and there's only one Faber, there's only one of the these guys, but I think Moscow's like the mix that they have and the combination of the youth and the veteran. Like Kester is kind of like the godfather of the group, the elder statesman and stuff. But you're right, some of these young talent coming through, it's going to really be how they compete and play again these bigger games as you see down the road. They'll be telling to where they end up going. But yeah, I mean, we all thought going in what Matthew Wood was going to be on a line with what Oliver Moore and whatever, like it kind of shows how you can start off differently and can work really well. You don't just have to load up every single line in a certain way, and maybe Wood in that line flourishes, and then you have Snuggerud in a different line and kind of roll from there.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we talk about the blue line. Is it going to compare to 23 out in Tampa? No. But you have 8 guys, 8, not 6, 8, that could probably play in the top 4 of the majority of rosters in college hockey. And it's really fun. You got 3, if not 4 lines that can go toe-to-toe with anyone. If the goaltending can hold up like they did this weekend, which I think this coming weekend against Duluth is going to be a more interesting test. First time that they're going to play the same team back-to-back, which is what's going to happen all year, right? But you're going to see both goalies against the same team. You're going to see both teams make adjustments going from Friday to Saturday. Like I'm really excited to see what this looks like being, I don't think Duluth is in the same conversation as the Gophers, like top to bottom of roster. They're fun though. If you're a Duluth Bulldogs fan, you're excited about how much young blood they brought in. They got some really talented freshmen. There's gonna be some growing pains this year. And if you expect anything different, like, sorry, you don't get it. It's gonna be ups and downs, but they're frisky. And if they can figure enough out throughout the season with all those ups and downs, like this is a team that could be frisky come postseason. But if you're a Duluth fan, again, you have to be excited watching some of this young talent. And I just want the Gophers to go up and punish them this weekend, though, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, like in these early season matchups was fun, right? Because there's not a lot of pressure. Like you look at every year, even some of the big programs stumble out of the gates. The Gophers last year kind of stumbled a little bit early on and kind of figured themselves out. So, like, I love those early season matchups, either out of conference or whatever. See what happens, see what new guys emerge, see how the team is gelling. It's not really know all about the Gophers team or the Duluth team until probably about December time, So I think this is where you let fans get their fantasies going or to get their minds blown to what could be possibly happening. But we haven't seen the Matthew Wood that's going to be that Matthew Wood end of the year. So just have fun with it, enjoy it, enjoy college hockey and enjoy hockey in general, going in this fall/winter weather we're having.
Yeah. And the one other storyline that's going to be followed all year, there's no way around it. Red Pitlick keeps scoring. It's going to be fun. I'm not bummed because it's going to be an awesome weekend in general, and we should probably talk about it quick too. But I was just like glancing through the schedule, and they've got the abbreviations, and I saw MSU middle of December, and I'm like, oh, that's going to be so awesome. No, it's Michigan State. But on that note, before we get into the current Wild roster, Charlie Stramel, he came out. He had a 2-goal performance, and he's looking pretty good doing it.
Top line, Charlie Stramel too, right?
Yeah.
Like the number three star of the week, right? Yeah, I mean, like I don't think people expect him to be a top line center in the NHL, but I think it was such a much needed confidence boost and just big change to go to Michigan State and a coach that he trusts and to be able to play some of these bigger roles and be able to be productive. He's not going to be a huge goal scorer, but he can still, find a way. And I don't know. Sometimes there are guys that'll go somewhere and be a 4-year letter winner, so to speak, and be champions of a program and legends, right? And there's some guys that just need a push here and there, or the right person to believe in them, the right person to get him in that perfect spot. And so who knows what will happen with Charlie Stramel down the road here, but this was a much needed change. And it's also, I think he probably feels kind of kicking the ass, this is a prove me kind of year. He needs to kind of show that promise that people believed in him, Judd Brackett and the group. He wants to be able to go sign a pro contract. He wants to be able to move on to the next level. And if he can show the size and the power forward ability when draws, obviously at Michigan State, he can play top 6 role. He probably won't play top 6 role in Minnesota, but why not go for it? And so I think that's a really encouraging sign if you're looking for the Wild prospects.
Absolutely. And he'll never admit it. I probably wouldn't even ask, but there had to be a little extra fire lit under him based on who they were playing against there. Not BC, one Gabe Perreault, who I think a couple of Wild fans may or may not have clamored for in that draft spot. So fun that he did it against him. 9 Mile Brewing, located in the land of local legend Mark Parrish. That's right, none other than Bloomington is proud to be the newest partner of Fellowship of the Rink. Stop on by the tap room for some fresh, local craft beer, NA beverages, and a variety of snacks. Seasonal beers do rotate frequently just to keep their offerings new and exciting, with games available for all ages, and that includes contests, different tournaments. I know Crokinole is a big one right now. They have cribbage tournaments, and of course, euchre for the sickos out here in the Midwest like myself. But on top of that, I can tell you firsthand, they encourage everyone to bring out their inner nerddom with staff and regular patrons alike. Producer Isha and myself were out there recently and recorded some really fun content with their head brewer, John, only to happen across a collection of Lord of the Rings replica swords. If you want to see where things went from there, be sure to check out the full video on our YouTube channel. Just go and search The Soda Pod. It's the Flight series, and it was a lot of fun. Cheers to the state of hockey. And again, friends, go check out our newest partner here, 9 Mile Brewing out in Bloomington. Let's get into then the Minnesota Wild here, Joe. And we already talked about tonight's game. Those of you listening on Wednesday, recording right after the end of that game. The first thing you brought up to me, and it was going to be a topic regardless, but let's just get into it. What happened to this 3 goalie rotation? Is this something that they told Jesper Wallstedt, get a place in the cities. You're going to be up here a lot. What's happening now?
God, just the best laid plans, right? And I wrote about this in September, right? Why it's such a difficult thing, even if you have the cap space to have the 3 goalies, right? Which is very rare. Keeping 3 goalies happy or keeping 3 goalies fresh, keeping 3 goalies in rhythm. But the injuries off the bat, the Wild have dealt with, the Spurgeon, Joel Eriksson neck, broken nose. I think Wallstedt was going to schedule tentatively to start in St. Louis tonight. I think that was the plan. If all worked out well, that wouldn't have been a goalie goal from Gustavsson, but he had to go back and forth, the yo-yo back and forth because of the cap situation and needing call-ups defensively and up front. So yes, that's the plan they've orchestrated all along. It's the plan that they've thought about of getting Wallstedt more NHL quality competition. And now you're going to have a guy who's going to go back to, I don't know if he has a place still in Iowa or if he's going to be in the hotel in Iowa or is he going to think he's going to play
crashing
in Iowa?
Crashing on Lambos's floor, probably.
You never know, but it's just
maybe that mattress that fell off the truck is just chilling on the sidewalk somewhere, and Gus is Wallstedt will just post up.
Well, Wallstedt's got some good money now. You have signed a new contract extension, so he should be able to be okay. But I'm saying, it just you want a guy of that importance to your organization, like having a real true plan and organization, like get him games. Like I don't care where he plays, let him play somewhere regularly because if he goes back and forth like this, or like, you try to ship in and out or parachute in and out of Iowa, it's being so tough, right? His head's not going to be in Iowa. His head's going to be up here. His head's going to be in Minnesota wanting to play and wondering when the next call up will be. So I think that's one thing in the story I wrote in September, I think it was, early October, about talking to goalies who've been through it, the Ryan Millers and Marty Barons and Wilson and Millers, like, it's really important for young players to know what it's like to have a net before you give it to them in the NHL full time. Like, it's important, like, to know what it's like to be that guy for 60 games. And yes, Wallsted's played there in Iowa a couple of years and he's played a lot of games, but if he loses this year in development wise to not play enough in either place, because next year is going to be, in theory, Gustavsson and Wallsted, right? Like, I think that's what the game plan is. So you need to figure out what's going to be put them in the best position to get there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. You hit on the injuries there, though. What do we know? Like, we thought that Ek was going to be playing tonight, and I assume was he just held out because we've got a big gap between now and Saturday, so why not give him the extra day of rest? Or is there any setback with him?
No, like, he has a broken nose, and like, I don't know if the flying was an issue or not for the one game. Like, I think my guess that he'll be back Saturday against Columbus. So I think their plan was to fly him to St. Louis, and then he had the broken nose, and they figured the one game to give it just an extra few days, like you said. The more concerning one, I guess, for me, I know Johansson was out too, is Spurgeon, just because of what happened last year and the multiple surgeries he went through in the spring. Not knowing fully what's going on with him. Don't want to extrapolate too much or make it sound like it's some sort of dire thing. But anytime you have a defenseman who's played that many minutes and tough minutes and in his early to close, in your 30s and coming off of, the hip and the back and all these different kind of surgeries, how's he going to respond? And so they haven't said that it's related to the injuries he's had last year, only that it's lower body injury and that he's day-to-day, which day-to-day could be turned to week. You never know. But I think just for the Wild purposes, how important he is to the room, to the team, to the blue line. Like, I think that'd be the biggest concern for me, because I think Eck will be back. I mean, he can play with just how tough he is. He'll play with a broken nose that, you need him to. But if Spurgeon has some sort of longer-term issue, that's how last year started. He got hurt off the bat, and then it really was hard for them to recover. So will be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, for sure. The big story that popped recently, you again cheating on your, paternity leave, round 2. People got a little riled up, excited, good or bad, depending on who you ask, regarding the quote unquote 5-year plan that you and Russo got to sit down and discuss with Craig Leipold. We're not going to get into all the intricacies here, but like, what can you share? Like, positive, negative, whatever your take is, like, what did you get out of that?
Well, I think the idea for this story was that the Wild were like a franchise at a crossroads, right? Like, they made this decision 4 years ago to buy out Parise and Suter, who were supposed to be the linchpins of the championship run that the Wild were going to go on, because of, of all the teams, they picked Minnesota, and they were the guys that were going to come back in 13-year contracts and do it. And so the whole idea behind it was that Wild fans have been patient for this time, knowing that the reward would be next summer, when the cap hits mostly came off the $14.7 million dead cap hits that they've been playing with, the one-hand time on their backs, as Bill Guerin called it. Kaprizov is going to be 1 year away from free agency. Like, this is where they give them their big splash, their Christmas morning, as Leipold put it to us. But in talking to Leipold and Guerin, like we got the sense that, I think they realized it would take longer than they thought initially, and they're calling this kind of year 2 of a 5-year plan now, which I can see where Wild fans would be frustrated by, because if you're a Wild fan, it's been like a 20-year plan, right? So I think the story really delved into, listen, this is a hockey mad state, not just a city, not just the Twin Cities or area. They're passionate. They feel the X all the time, win or lose, first round or not. I think most people would agree that they, of like all markets, deserve a winning team. And Craig Leipold and his ownership group have not wanted to stomach a rebuild. They just don't want to see what it's like probably at the X for a team that's, let's say, the Blackhawks the last 2 years, right? Like, and I don't know, like, would Wild fans show up for that? They might. I don't know. But, like, I don't think they wanted to risk that. And so they've been in that middle ground of, let's be competitive. Let's spend to the cap and do this and give the team a chance. And if they're playing meaningful hockey in March and April and in the playoffs, the fans are happy and keeps them coming. So from a business level, everything's been going great. They've been selling out their suites and their lower bowl for forever, and corporate sales are through the roof. Like, if you're a businessman, like, what's going wrong? But if you're like the ones you're depending on are the fan base, like, how long will they be patient for was a question I think we wanted to answer in our article, and reasons why they're going this route, or what the actual plan is to get there. And can this plan coincide with Kirill Kaprizov signing next summer? Because you have to kind of convince this guy who will be like 29 when he signs when his extension kicks in officially in a couple of years. It's not a guy who's 23. You want to convince a guy his final years of his prime and major part of his career to stay a place. So that's the whole premise of the story. And talk to Leipold and Guerin and players and other people around the organization to see, may not be at a crossroads in terms of there's no heat on Billy Guerin. There's no, not going to blow it up. They've signed these veteran guys to long-term deals. Like, they have a plan, but the plan will blow up if Perreault doesn't sign, right? Next summer it'll be, and whether it's better to do a rebuild or it's better to keep this kind of philosophy going and waiting until the stars align of these guys being together and the young prospects coming up and playing and fitting well.
Agree with a lot of that. My question for you, let's say Kirill doesn't re-sign, and like you said, then you're at a crossroads of, do you rebuild or do you keep on this path? Is rebuild even an option with some of the contracts that Guerin has given out? Like, you look at some of the guys that have like trade protection, and those are the older veteran guys. Like, can you really do that turnaround to effectively do a rebuild?
I mean, I think you can. Like, I mean, you think about it, in 2 years when Kirill would be gone, right? Or if you trade him in the summer, if that happens, like, we're not saying that's going to happen, but in 2 years, some of those veteran contracts will be in their last 1 year and a half, where guys can be on their modified no trade clauses. Guys you have on long-term deals now, whether it's a Spurgeon or whatever, on modified as well or whatever. So you have some flexibility there. Young guys coming in, like, might not really have a choice there. If that happens, you have to rethink things. You don't have that building block to build around. Like, you could build around Matt Boldy, and I think he's a terrific. We'll talk about him later. He's such a budding star, and but still, he will be the first to tell you that the superstar on this team is Kirill Kaprizov. So, you don't replace it. You're not going to win a trade dealing him, right? As good as Jet Bracket is, as good as everything is, you don't win that trade right away. So, but I'm just thinking from my point of view, assuming that they do sign Kirill, they do play well this year and give Kirill a chance and he signs, are Wild fans going to be patient enough to stick with him for 3 more years of this 5-year plan that could be 6, as Craig said, if they don't make it in 5? Like, where's the Wilds fans' patient level at this point? Or, as one person told me, they'll stick with them. What other choice do they have? Like, what other team they're going to follow? This is the team that they've wanted to come back to Minnesota. They lost the North Stars. This is the team that's been here, ride or die. This is the team, like, are Wild fans patient enough to stick through this another 5-year plan?
Yep. Well, Joe, let's transition here into the meaty mailbag we've got here from the fans. This interview is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions. All the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it, that makes you say, wow, that was made for me. Because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your waggle on? Go to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 at checkout to take 10% off your entire order. Again, thank you all for giving us good questions here to work with. First one we're going to do is the fun one. I had to pluck it out right away. From Gidget Rhinobuns. Which Tolkien race is Middleton, and why is it a dwarf?
I'm going to have you take this one. Actually, you take this one.
Oh, I'm taking it, or I'm leading it. It's funny because I think that's such a great answer from Gidget Rhinobuns. Just the vibe of Middleton as a person, like he's just like the goofball, right? Like you look at him as class clown. And I actually, if I want to dig deep and give a different answer than was provided by the question asker, this one's going to sound mean, but it's really more just the vibe. I'm going to say he's a troll.
Okay.
And I'm really thinking not to Lord of the Rings. I'm thinking like in The Hobbit, where like you've just got these like goofy trolls who like, yeah, the idea is that like they're big, dumb ogres that like are like don't know their own strength kind of thing, but they're just like so goofy and simple-minded and like playful in how they're thinking about everything. And it just like gives me a lot of the Middleton vibes. So I'm not saying he's dumb. I'm more going to those three that are like sitting around the campfire talking about how they're going to like cook up all these people that are sitting there with them. And it's just like the way they're talking about it, just like the relaxed, goofy vibe that they bring feels very Middleton. And I'm only pivoting to that because I think Dwarf is actually an awesome answer, even though ironically, like he's probably the tallest guy on the team.
Yeah, it would be more Dwarf in personality versus like the size thing. Like that would be.
He's a dwarf troll.
Okay, combination.
There we go.
Like, yeah, like I think you think of the characters in the movies, and like that personality would fit the dwarf square. Like he would fit that with his smart act comments and like kind of the way he does it. Like that would fit it. Not just the facial hair and all that stuff too, but like overall, I think he would be.
Is he a dwarf-sized troll or a troll-sized dwarf? Which way are we going to do that?
Wow. Good one.
I'm going to go troll-sized dwarf so that I'm not saying he's dumb. I like that.
No, it's good. Keep the questions coming.
Give us the Lord of the Rings spins. That's great. All right, we got Big BP55. How alarming is the state of the Wild decor now and as they move forward? Spurgeon already out. Brodin, Middleton aren't getting any younger, and Bogosian isn't a long-term answer, and most prospects are years away. Would you consider moving Brodin to a contender to get younger? So several questions layered in there. First, are you worried about the greater overarching decor, given the Spurgeon injury and given, not included in this question, but the speed bumps that we saw in Iowa last year with the blue line?
Yeah, like I think if Spurgeon is a long-term issue, I think you'd be a little more concerned because right now you have, Brodin, Faber, Spurgeon, Middleton side long-term. You have Zeeb by him coming, right? And we all know that Bogosian's not a long-term answer, right? I think you can plug in a Damon Hunt for him or a Chisholm, right? And he could probably fit in that role. So, I don't think Brodin's game's dropping that much the next couple of years. I think he's still going to be a really reliable, strong kind of shutdown caliber defenseman. So I think with the youth that they brought in already with Faber and Byam, I think that's kind of helped alleviate some of the concerns. So I guess the big question mark here is Spurgeon, because has been such a big part of it. Is him being perpetually, if he's injured again and you can't use his cap space against somebody else or whatnot, if you lose him and that cap space is one thing, but I don't want to go too overboard with that because he could be back on Saturday, right?
Totally.
And be playing. And if Jared Spurgeon plays like Jared Spurgeon 2 years ago, I don't think people are complaining about the blue line or saying, oh, how great are they set up now? They have veteran players and then they have these young guys coming up to replace them overall. So,
yeah.
And that's not it. That's not including if the Jack Parts or any of these other guys develop into what they could be. So, yeah, I think I'm not overwhelmingly concerned about the blue line right now. It'd be more so if Spurgeon's injuries were chronic or related to last season, that'd be more of a concern for me. But I think with Faber and Byam coming probably this spring and Brodin still not losing a step at this point, I think that they're in an okay spot there for right now.
Yeah, and I think it's important too to point out for like some fans that, why don't we just throw Spurgeon on LTIR? Like LTIR doesn't let you just like hide someone's cap hit. What it does is let you exceed the salary cap ceiling by the amount of that player's contract. So essentially what you'd want to do is get as close to that cap ceiling minus Spurgeon as possible so that everything in excess doesn't count, right? But letting him sit during the season when you're not getting up to that cap floor, you're not going to LTIR him and you're not getting any cap benefit. And once you're in LTIR, you're not banking any salary cap throughout the season, like we've seen in the past where it's like, the Wild only have like a couple million cap space, but somehow they've got like 12 million to wheel and deal with that they've banked throughout the season, right? So just important to layer that out there because I know a lot of fans just think LTIR means, your cap doesn't matter. And that's not really how it works.
Yeah, like I think overall, like you said, you can't just subtract his cap hit and then all of a sudden add to it, in free agency. I think, and plus, if you want to put him on LTIR, it means he's out for the season. If you want to add to him, or at least past the trade deadline. So, and I think we're not wanting to jump that far ahead of things. Like he's day to day and could be back Saturday. So until there's an announcement on Wednesday morning that he's out for the season, let's not worry about that for this particular point. But yeah, I think for the big picture concerns about the blue line, I think if he's back to where he hopes to be and he worked his ass off this summer to get back to where he wants, the kind of player he is, then I think that the blue line is in pretty good shape in the short term. And then knowing that they can go draft more to develop behind the Brodin and Spurgeons and Middletons who will eventually age out of the roster. Yeah.
This next one is going to be probably pretty brief because I know you and Russo have already kind of hit on this a bit, but Stephen B., thank you for the question. If the Wild miss the playoffs again this season, should Billy Guerin be on the hot seat? So I guess the question is, should he be versus will he be?
Yeah, because we already know he won't be in the hot seat, right? Craig Leipold told us that there's no heat on Guerin because of this 5-year plan, right? It's only year 2 of a 5-year plan.
Right.
Whether she should be, I think there should be some accountability there. I think he'd be the first to say, anytime you're a GM for 5 seasons, and I guess the lack of playoff success, even though you've had some good regular seasons, a couple 100-point years, there have been some really good times and some really good trades, right? He's made the Brock Faber trade in Fiala and getting over into. He's made the moves to, let's say, I think Middleton was a good trade. A few other things were good ones. So he's made some good moves, but I just think that overall, anytime you're a GM for that long in the same place and you don't have the success you need to, or don't get playoff success. There, even though it's not internal heat as far as from the ownership and your job is relatively safe, I think he'd be the first person to tell you that there's urgency to show for their long-term plan. In this Perreault kaprizov for one instance and for free agents, right? Part of their plan is signing free agents next summer. But if him and his group can't prove that they can be competitive and contenders and be one or two players away, why would those one or two players want to sign in Minnesota next summer? So I think that's part of the wrinkle of it too. It's less so that he has his job's on the line this year. It's more so of what they can show this year internally and in the playoffs to free agents next year who have all the choices in the world. Other teams that may be able to offer them more money, or you have to choose to play in Minnesota and believe Minnesota's a chance to win a championship. So same thing for Perreault. So that's where the pressure, I think, for me would be internally on Bill Guerin.
Yeah, no, that goes right into Joe Campion's question. With the injuries starting out, will it affect the Kaprizov extension this year? Especially if the injuries are more long-term for key players.
I guess, it's only would affect it if it's long-term, like career debilitating, I think, right? Like, is it long-term, like a few months, or long-term, like a full season? Like if Perreault's signing here for the next, after 2 years from now, right? He's contracted up for 2 years. So like, if he's going to look at this team after this year, and like you said to Mike Russo, my colleague in our story, like he's not even thinking about like 2 years from now. Like he'll probably think about that starting this summer when they can start to talk to him about an extension. But I don't think we're talking about the injuries that we're discussing right now are going to be able to, unless they're career threatening, really going to play into that particular discussion.
Carter Wetmore brings to us, this season has been a small sample size so far, obviously a couple games in, but are there trends forming that you think will continue? Trends that Carter points out that he sees: Trenin does not pass the eye test, Gus looks great, PK is still leaky.
Yeah, obviously when you do trends after 4 or 5 games, they could obviously, sample size could change things in a moment's notice. Like Gustavsson, like you said, is really encouraging the first couple starts as a team that's been kind of uncertain in goal. They've been saying that if a guy takes the net over and can show he can play and be that guy, they'll abandon the 3 goalie plan and just play the guy that gives them a chance to win. They're in that position as a franchise right now to do that. As for Trenin, I think his impact will go beyond numbers. So I think he's still trying to get a feel for how he fits. And I think that line, with him and Foligno has shown some positive steps. Like, I don't think he's kind of popped up the page like a Lauko has in terms of some of the plays he's made or some of the consistency in what he's done in different, the penalty kill, for example. But I think Trenin's values, they signed him for long-term as well in free agency. I think his impact will be seen a little more as the season goes on.
Yeah, I would agree though, like with Carter, generally speaking, on Trenin, like he hasn't looked great, but it's way too early to judge on a guy that just came into the organization. It'd be different for me if Trenin was with the team all of last year, right? Mm-hmm. I agree. Like, I haven't seen a ton, but I'm not even close to worrying about whether or not Trenin passes the eye test because we're only a couple games in on a guy who's brand new to the roster. Do you have any trends that you've noticed, Joe? Like, is anything that you're seeing early in the season like, oh, this could develop into kind of being a regular thing?
Well, like I think we mentioned off the top, but just what kind of year Boldy could have. I think the first game or two just off the charts there. And I don't know where he's going to play as the season goes on with all the injuries. They'll be kind of shuffled here and there, but he has the look to him, or I think what really, like Mike Russo and my colleague wrote a story about him opening night. where he played in World Championships with Johnny Gaudreau, his kind of idol growing up, and getting a chance to be around him and be line mates with him really kind of played a role in him being, I'd say maturing is the wrong word, but he really. I've been around this before in Tampa with Nikita Kucherov, and he got a chance to play with Ovechkin in World Championships. This was after a year in which the Lightning lost to Columbus in the first round, right? And then he won awards, and he went to Worlds, and he got a chance to be around Ovechkin, and it was like he got a firsthand look of what he does behind the scenes, how he leads, how he's there for teammates and whatnot. And so I think it really kind of helped change him as far as a player and what he does well-rounded wise and what he does off the ice. And I don't know if this is the exact same comparison with Matt Boldy, but I think Matt Boldy being around Gaudreau at Worlds and playing in World Championships and having as good a tournament as he did, and just seeing all that stuff has got to, and obviously the loss of Gaudreau hit everybody hard, but especially for Matt, that's something going to carry with him as the season goes on. And so I think when you have a player with that talent and that ability, that confidence level, if you can find something that can kind of provide that spark to take to the next step. And he's clearly a guy who can be, I think, as Bill Guerin predicted, a 50-50 guy, 50 goals, 50 assists. So I don't know if that'll be this season or not, but just from watching early season going, I think he could be a terrific year. The big impressions for me early on were to figure out the goalie situation and Gus having a great start aside from his goal tonight, deciding who can be the guy that takes the net over. Right. The PK, we mentioned earlier, Khusnutdinov and Lauko playing well together. And the injuries, there's so many injuries the first four games is pretty crazy. There have been many kind of disturbing trends as far as individual players concerned. I think it's too early for that. Like what Matt Boldy did, had struggles the first 16 games last year, and then all of a sudden ended up with 30 plus goals. So I think depending on who you're looking at and what their role should be, I think it's where the kind of evaluation point should look at.
Yeah, I mean, on that point too, with Gaudreau, awesome tribute tonight by the Blue Jackets for their home opener against the Florida Panthers, which like super unfortunate that Matthew Tkachuk wasn't able to make it with how tight he was with Johnny. But they had the Blue Jackets line up with 4 players at the opening faceoff. The left wing was vacated, won the draw over to that left wing and let it sit there, and burned off 13 seconds from the start of the game, whistled it dead, played again after that. Very unique and pretty cool tribute.
No, I mean, there's no playbook or game plan for how you handle this type of thing. And Dean was in town. Jefferson was in town for the Wild opener. And I saw what he's done at the end of practice, having a drill that was kind of a tribute to Johnny Gaudreau, where I think if you have a shot from a certain area, and if you miss, you have to do multiple laps versus if you score, you do 1 lap, or it was some sort of drill like that at the end of practice where they kind of kept his memory alive, aside from like the jersey in the locker on their home and road. And they had Guy Gaudreau at a practice the other day, like it just, there's no playbook for it, but I think they've hit the right notes with what they can do and making sure that the presence doesn't quite overwhelm them day to day, but they don't forget about him. They make sure to kind of even a smaller stint, because it's not going to go away anytime soon. The memories, the loss, and that grief is not going to happen. So why not kind of lean in and realize, how important this player was, these guys, and how they can channel it in the right way. Yeah.
And what a start for his buddy too, who, like, you got to assume Monahan only went there to play with Gaudreau, but he's been a great leader for them there. Popped off in a great way. The one that I'll mention briefly, we don't have to sit on it too much, but as far as guys that, like, there's an early trend for me, and shocker, whatever, I like the player, but like this is a very objective stance. Like, I think Marco Rossi looks way more confident. He is not gripping the stick as tight. He's not out there trying to prove anything. Now he's out there having, had the year he did last year as a rookie. He just seems like he's like there and part of the team. He has arrived and now he's just playing his game. And he hasn't been flawless by any means, but you can just tell there's a different vibe about him than last year, where it's like, you could tell he was gripping it. He was trying to prove something.
Yeah, I mean, he scored a goal tonight, even too, playing with Kaprizov and Zuccarello and getting the fortunate bounce to him. And he was ready there, Johnny, on the spot to score a goal. And I had a really good conversation with him early in camp, and what last year did for him confidence-wise, to where now he's not even thinking, not even trying to process too much, just letting instincts take over. And we all know what his instincts have done for him in his career leading up to the pro hockey level. So, he learned physically what he can do. I won't take any shit from anybody, as he told me, being a smaller player. But I think you're right. I mean, he does still have something to prove in terms of getting signed long-term with the Wild, but I think he's already kind of proven that he's an NHL caliber player. He's proven he's a guy who can play in a top six, even with the Minnesota Wild here. And so I think it's more just continuing that comfort level and kind of taking the next step, where I think he said he wanted to score 30 goals, right? Going from 21 to 30 is a big step for him, but getting the time he has or the role he has with this group, it's not out of the question for that to happen, especially if he plays with Kaprizov and Zuccarello longer this season.
For sure. Last one we have here from the mailbag, and then one more we got to throw in for our good friends at Waggle Golf. Hodag fam. At 5v5, whenever a player breaks their stick while hemmed in the D zone, they keep playing, generally ineffectively, until they get a clear. Why not go get a stick or even change and rejoin play? I would think essentially giving up a 10-second power play is better than an extended 5v 4.5.
Well, it's a good question. I guess it depends on where they are too in the game as far as time situation, how much, if there's a 1 goal game, it's a tied game. Also, if they're the long change or the short change, where it's all of a sudden go from behind their net, all of a sudden other side of the ice. If you're a D or a forward, a lot of times the forward will give the stick back to the D, right? Or they'll, you'll have guys who are right shots give a left shot stick just because they have that for their net front presence and stuff like that. It is a slippery slope as far as knowing when, and the key is not being in between where you go half to the bench and half stay. Like, you have to be committed either way.
Yeah.
Either stay in your zone, use your body and positioning. And there's been a lot of guys who had some really good shifts without a stick, right? Either stalling or either trying to find a way to get it out of the zone, kicking it or whatever. But yeah, I don't think there's a correct answer or perfect answer for it, but I think it's all time situation, where they are on the ice. Usually they have a equipment manager or somebody else ready with the stick right away if they get there. But I think typically, especially if you're already on PK or if 5-on-5, I think the question was 5-on-5, yeah. So 5-on-4. But I think the most time the tendency is, especially if you're pinned in the D zone, is for guys to stick it out until they get a break or a stoppage or a way to do it. But yeah, there's no perfect way to handle it. I think guys just kind of are taught certain ways and given game situations what to do. But until you're in that moment where you're like, okay, well, I don't want to leave my guys straight. I can at least be getting in the way. I can block a shot. I can do this. I can do a body check or whatever. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of where I see it.
Yeah, and for me, I'm totally with you. Obviously, like, long change, you're not going to do it, but it's hard in the middle of play to make this determination. But for me, it's less about like game situation and more about personnel, right? Like, who are you out there against?
Yeah.
Skilled players? Yes, no. Like, can you be more of a deterrent too? Like, there's some guys, if you're a forward, like maybe it's a defenseman on the blue line that you're not worried is going to walk you and your stick isn't really going to matter, right? Get in the way, take the lane. But it is interesting because I get the counter argument here from Hodag fam. Like, can you survive that 10 seconds? Because the bigger thing for me is your team aware? Like, are they going to jump into position right away and be ready? Do you have guys out there that know how to play a 5-on-4, right? And to process all of that on the spot and go, it's tough to make the decision. And you nailed it. You can't be half in, half out. You're either going or you're not going.
Yeah.
So if you're even second hesitating it, you're staying. I think that's where a lot of players stay, because once you make that commitment, you just kind of got to roll with it. But it's a fair argument. I totally get it. It's just hard to process on the ice.
Yeah, I can see as a fan where it can be frustrating too. You see him like, just get off the ice, or like you're in the blue line, top of the blue line, the bench is right there, like do it, So I can see where that comes from. But there's a lot of reading, reacting guys who've done this for a long time, trying to figure that out too, from their instincts. But yeah, I think that the time situation, who they're out against, all that stuff plays a role.
Fair. Last one here. This is our Waggle golf question. Everyone go to getyourwaggleon.com. Make sure you throw in promo code SP10 to take 10% off your entire order. If you're listening on podcast, check in the episode description for the link. If you're watching on YouTube, again, link in description too. Joe, I'll lead on this because for you, it's going to be a little bit different for sure, being that you're typically in the press box and I'm one of the degenerates down there with the fans. But we've already done our golf foursomes in the past. Our selection for this time is going to be go-tos at a wild game, concessions. Now for you, that could be what are just your top like concession picks at any sporting event, right? I'm going to go specific to the X, and I'll go first just because, again, I've got this off the top. For me, first and foremost, not just because they are a sponsor, but yes, they are, Barrel Theory Beer Company. Their beer is the best beer at the X. I felt that way before they were ever a sponsor, and weird, that's why we pursued them as a sponsor, because why would we sponsor something that we don't believe in? Their Crowlers or their Raindrops on tap, incredible option. My second one, very slept on. Granted, I hate that they put blue cheese crumbles on it, and I always ask them not to, but buffalo chicken waffle fries. Now, this isn't for the faint of heart. Like, this is one that you've kind of got to be ready for what you're signing up for. There's days where the stomach might just not be prepared for that, but it is a delicious option. For me, for the money and for what it is, I also think it's newer the last couple of years, but my number 3 is the walking taco.
Okay.
It is really easy to grab and go. You're not going to make a big mess. It's single digit expense and it's delicious. I don't know what more I need there. So a great option. If people weren't aware, like it absolutely exists and it's incredible. My last one, definitely depends on what you're going for. There's different moods, different vibes, but I'll just throw this in because it's a new offering and because it's weird. But this year they have a pickle pizza.
Oh, wow.
There is a slice of pizza, which everyone's seen the pizza slices. Yeah, it's playing off the fare. I don't know why they didn't do it sooner though, but yeah, I had my first pickle pizza slice at the home opener and you know what? It was pretty good. So I'll have that rounded out. So I've got any offering of Barrel Theory at the X. We've got the buffalo chicken waffle fries. We've got the walking taco, and we've got the pickle pizza. So, Joe, whether you want it to be about the X or just general concession moves for Joe Smith, give me your 4. What do we got?
Okay, so won't do the X since I don't matriculate down to the concourse as much as I probably should. I think there's concerts I'll do that, but I don't have the experience level there. We have our own kind of setup in the media, so I won't go that route. But I think overall, if I'm at a concert or a Twins game or whatever game I am at, first I'm going to the craft beer section. I'm going to go to Summit or wherever else it is, Barrel Theory if it would be at the X.
Sure.
Get myself a nice IPA to start the night off with. My wife and I love like nachos or some sort of some sort of pulled pork dish, with something like in baseball, something you eat out of a helmet, right? Something you eat out of a helmet with nachos, right? Something you can kind of nice and hearty to get those snack going. and so I think that would be, you go from IPA to like snack for me. And this is my own psycho ways. Like, I'm a Diet Coke guy, right? And so if I can find a place that has refillable Diet Coke, like kind of like thing, I will find that in whatever concession stand I can find.
Hang on. Have you ever found a refillable pop at a venue like that, whether it's a concert or
they're all the souvenir cups. They all do refills. Yeah.
I am learning this for the first time. People in the comments, like, please tell me, am I crazy for not being aware of this, or is this news to you too? Because I had no idea that they refill
souvenir stuff. They do refills. They will put them on a business, and anytime I will, even it's so yeah.
Joe's goal is to put you out of business.
They should know better than to give refillable Diet Cokes to me, because I'll just send that one. IPAs, then like some sort of nacho, things that dip, what kind of thing. And so I guess it depends on what game I'm at, but like for baseball, it's always trying to find the best brat I could find, right? Mm-hmm. Old fashioned Midwest style.
Underrated at the X. They have a jalapeno cheddar, like Wisconsin brat or something at one of the stands there along the glass. It is delicious. Mm-hmm. So that's the bridge over. But I'm with you. A brat's a great move.
So I think those are the 3 or 4 there, and then I'm trying to think. And if we're not going fully on food, because I tackle some food thing. Mostly I go to the souvenir spot, and I just try to find. I'm a big hat guy. I love, I have way too many hats. My wife will tell me we're moving this weekend, so I have like a door rack full of hats. So I find some sort of t-shirt or hat that I can remember this certain moment by. So nice. Those are some of the guilty pleasures from my point of view.
I love it. And one that I'm going to support and disagree with. For me personally, this is a personal life choice. I love nachos. I do not want them at a sporting event. Like, if I'm out with people and we're trying to come up with an appetizer for the table, great. But if I'm sitting in my seat, there's people walking by me, knocking stuff over, I got to hold it in my lap. I'm not a nacho guy, but I absolutely support the decision to eat nachos. That's just not my setting to do so. I'm not willing to take the risk.
Too much of a mess, right? Yeah. But I just think they're a good way to start it off and get a, usually it has either chili on them or some sort of a lot of good toppings, or the nacho supreme. So you have all the different the jalapenos or whatever like that. So I think it's a good way to get something you can shareable. The two of you can do, and then you guys can both decide from there where to go. Do you go the brat route? Do you go dessert route? Do you go pizza route? You go whatever. So I think that's where you go.
And the one little caveat I'll throw out for the Wild games, I don't do it because I think they're a little subpar. But at a Twins game, I'm getting cheese curds. Absolutely. Yeah. I think the ones at the X, meh. Mm-hmm. I'll absolutely eat them, but I'm not seeking them out. But great round there. Again, everyone go to getyourwagalon.com. Throw in promo code SP10. Crush their hunting selection while it's still available. It's awesome stuff if you're into hunting. If you're not, it still looks cool, but maybe it's not your vibe. I get it. Well, Joe, let's round it out then with our final segment every week. Well, most weeks. We've moved it to the front a couple of times, but we got Keyboard Warriors Hot Take segment brought to you by our good friends at Barrel Theory Beer Company. Go find them at the X, section 105 if you want the crowler of the day, the Fleur of late, or hit section 112, 217, or club level 36 if you want to crush some raindrops. A delicious staple for them, another IPA. Hot takes this week, Joe. We got 2 of them. One of them, I'm actually really curious where you stand. And if you haven't seen the video, then my bad for not showing it previously. But did you catch the little exchange with Brady Tkachuk and one Lane Hudson, where Hudson was kind of doing the head fakes and Brady kind of got a little bit too into it there? Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of people making the comment that this is why the Senators aren't winning. Like, this guy can't be the leader of the organization. Like, he can't keep his cool. He's hot-headed. He's erratic. Like, he's the problem. What did you think about this whole exchange? Like, was it a bad thing, bad look for Brady Tkachuk or not?
I mean, it didn't come across well, I guess, in that particular scenario. Like, I don't have a big problem with it, though. I don't really have, like, it's a rookie, right? Lane Hudson's a terrific player, a young player that's going to be so good in this league. But I think it's just, as for good or bad, it's the natural order of things for veteran players in league to chirp younger players in league for doing things, a little bit of swag to it. So I don't think it was an awful look by Brady Tkachuk. Like, it didn't really bother me too much, whatever like that. But, like, I can see where Montreal fans would have been ticked off, but, like, people went through all this.
His fans were ticked off.
Yeah.
I'm going the opposite direction on this. I'm going to be completely honest. I think it's a big nothing burger that people want to be a thing. I think Brady Tkachuk is just, like, being a jester there. He's like, oh, you're going to go back and forth. Oh, I'm going to do it too. Like, I think he's just messing around. I think that's a big part of Brady's game, the Tkachuk's in general. Like,
or Matthew Tkachuk's game too, all of them. Like, I don't think I don't think they're going to think about this 4 days from now. I think there's people who gave Trevor Zegras so much shit all the first couple of years for stuff, and that's even different, right? But yeah, I don't think that's a big deal in my mind. I don't think Lane Hudson gives a shit either.
Yeah, it's business as usual for him. Big nothing burger. Now, if the next game they play, there's, like, further, like, antics between Tkachuk and Hudson, maybe I'll revise my take. But I think this is, I kind of liked it from Brady, to be honest. I thought it was kind of funny. But all right, take number 2. This one is coming from yours truly. The Colorado Avalanche are going to aggressively overpay to the point that the Wild have no choice but to trade Filip Gustavsson to them.
What is overpay?
It's probably going to start with a first.
I mean, to get a first-round pick, like, it's hard to turn that down as part of a package. Like, I think there are going to be teams that are starved for goalies that I think if Gustafsson continues his trend of playing like he is, there'll be a really good market for him. More of a market.
But that's the definition of starved for goalie, is it not? Mm-hmm. Colorado, they've scored 4 goals in both of their first 2 games. They were getting outscored 15-8.
Yeah.
Because their goalies are that incompetent. And maybe, like, Anunen is going to be the solution. Like, I do think there's some promise for that kid, but if he can't figure it out quick and Georgiev continues to be like this, they have no choice. They can't forfeit this season, and they're in a weird cap spot. Gustafsson's affordable, and he is a great solution for them to get them a 2-year bridge before they need to go back and scramble their salary cap yet again. It's tough to make an in-division trade like this, especially, like, the bad blood between the 2 teams, but if it's starting with a first and there's a little extra sweetener, it could make sense for both teams, because even though it's not good for the Wild and fans are weird, maybe they still want this just because it at least solves your 3 goalie dilemma. You're going to have Wallstedt learning from Fleury, like management and all the fans were hoping for. I just personally have thought since the end of last season, I want Gustafsson and Wallstedt to be the tandem next year. But if a team's willing to pay up, who's to say?
Well, like, and that's my counter argument is, like, you trade him, all of a sudden you put yourself in a difficult position of having, Fleury in his last year, right? And we'll see how his season goes. He came off a rough year last year, and a guy with 3 NHL starts, right? And then who's the guy who's going to play with Wallstedt next year? Like, Wallstedt's going to come in and play 60 games as a rookie, as a next year. Like, it almost, like, fits so well to have Gustafsson and Wallstedt next season at a cap hit combined of what, like $5.5 or $6 million or something like that. It's almost the most ideal situation to have, because it could have been this year if they didn't re-sign Fleury, right? It could have been.
I 100% agree with you, Joe.
Yeah.
My counter argument: why'd they try to trade him this summer?
Well, they tried to trade him this summer because they decided to sign Marc-Andre Fleury before that, and they wanted to play.
He is still signed.
I understand where you're coming from. I'm just saying I did not put him in the trade market. I did not decide to try to trade him this summer. It's not my decision.
We're on the same page. Yeah, I'm saying from a management perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, like, both of those guys came off down years. They made the decision to go with Fleury, and once you did that, you committed to Marc-Andre Fleury, and you put yourself in a situation where you had to make tough decisions on, okay, well, if they wanted Wallstedt to play, but you can't. There's only one net and 3 goalies, so that's where Gustavsson had probably more of the trade value and a guy you can move, but there wasn't the market for him. There might be a market for him this fall or this trade deadline. But my point is that the Wild, unless there's another goalie that's ready to come in, the Wild are in a better position if next year it's Wallstedt and Gustavsson, right?
Yeah.
And they're in a better situation a year from now if Gustavsson has the year he's capable of having and they make the playoffs and they win a round, right? So if you end up in so I guess in this part of this 5-year plan, big picture thing, if you want to be a competitive team, the Wild are a better team with Filip Gustavsson now than they are with a first-round pick now, right? For that. Yeah. So, you're they're not in a rebuilding mode, right? They're not in that situation. They're not, so I don't know.
No, and I'm not coming at you, Joe. Like, I think you and I view the situation the exact same. My cheekiness here is that management, if they couldn't move him this summer, there had to be something in the back of your mind that's like, hey, maybe this season we can trade him. If he's bad, you can't trade him, but want to. Now he's good. You can trade him, but don't want to. Did we kind of have a dilemma coming into the season that since Gus wasn't traded in the summer, there really isn't a world where he's going to get traded during the season, right? Kind of. Is there truth to that thought?
Well, the trade value wasn't very high in the summertime either. Right. You wouldn't be getting what's now, if you're talking to me about a first round pick and a package, you have to think about that, of course.
Sure.
I wouldn't want to give them away in the summertime, but the whole thing for me is they want to be competitive. They want to win a playoff round. And let's say if Wallstedt actually does get to play in the NHL level this year, with barring injuries, he will. Let's say he's tearing it up and Fleury looks good and the 3 goal system's tracking, and you decide in December the Avs call you, and all of a sudden that's the scenario. But if I'm looking at the situation I'm looking at now, I have a guy who's played 3 NHL games who's going to be really good. I have a guy who's turning 40 next month who's in the last year of his career. What's better to prepare your future for is having a guy like him to win games now and also to prepare him for next year and make the kid earn it. So, but yeah, I think if we're talking that scenario in December or January and Fleury's playing well and Wallstedt's showing he can be number 1 right now, then by all means, recoup all your picks. But I just be careful what you wish for when you're trading away guys.
No, I completely agree. I'm just thinking, what's Bill Guerin thinking? I hope he's thinking the way we are, because I don't want Gustavsson traded. I don't. I can see it being tempting if he came out of the summer being like, is there a world where we can? But no,
if he has a great year like this year and he has 1 year left on his deal, if he has another year that's similar to 2 years ago, all of a sudden he has a lot of trade value in the summertime and Wallstedt shows he can be a guy, why wouldn't you consider it? But I just think for right now, if it's what we know right now, that I think he's kind of the best next bridge next year, unless you think Wallstedt can play 55 games or 50 games.
No, I think this year and next year, Gustafsson's your best goalie for sure. Yeah. I think it's the perfect bridge towards Wallstedt being the starter in a couple of years. I am with you 100%. So
why am I pissed off at you? Why am I pissed off? I'm getting pissed off at you right now for this.
I know, it's great. I kind of like this. Ooh, this is our Russo Lapanta moment. I like it. No, this one's gonna do fun on YouTube. I'm excited to see some of the comments that come in with people very strong on both sides of this argument, I'm sure. But all right, we are on the same page. Let's just have that be clear. I do not want Gustavsson gone. I just think it's going to be interesting to watch whether or not he is. All right. Well, that's good. Joe, I don't know how strongly in effect the paternity leave is right now, but as we walk away from the hot take segment here, got a little extra spicy here today. Everyone, again, make sure you support our good friends at Barrel Theory who make it possible. Do we have any big stories in the works, whether it's a collaboration with you and Russo or things that he's told you he's writing, anything that the folks need to be checking out at The Athletic?
Yeah, obviously my colleague Mike Russo's covering the hell out of the team and doing a great job. And so he'll have more analysis on the injuries that are coming up and, the guys that are making impact like Lauko and all those guys. But I am on paternity leave, so I won't be writing as many stories as I was earlier in my leave. We're moving this weekend, so I will be a little off the radar a bit. But my colleagues, both Mike and around the NHL group, does a terrific job to follow them. And I don't have anything on top of my head as far as what Mike has coming up this week, but I think overall, anytime there's a major news or analysis, he's going to be the one to cover that, and I'll be helping out when I can, when I'm able to be free to do it. But thanks so much, everybody, for following along and for listening to our pod and following it in Spotify, Apple, YouTube, where you can see our beautiful faces and reactions and all that fun stuff. Any questions or comments or guys you want us to have as guests, please hit that in the reply and either on our Twitter mentions or on the channels here, and we'll try to hook you up with some fun interviews coming up in the next month or so, and just let it roll.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Hey, as always, guys, we appreciate you tuning in for this week's installment of Fellowship of the Rink. You stay classy, stay to hockey.